Up next, our topic is called Trusting the Data, a proactive use of soil moisture information, and our speaker is Ryan Hutchison. He is a crop intelligence business development lead with South Country Equipment. Ryan has worked in the precision ag industry for over 25 years. During that time, he has been a part of the introduction of guidance systems, auto steer, satellite imagery, weather stations, moisture probes, and variable rate technologies. Ryan has long understood the value of good data and when it is trusted and put into action. His team's goal is to help producers collect timely, accurate, usable data for their operations. Please join me in welcoming Ryan to the stage.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for the opportunity to come and talk today. And because I am from Saskatchewan, how many Rider fans are here? Oh, there's a few, not bad. How many of you have a moisture probe that you're using on the farm today or been involved in one? A few hands up. So today, and Réjean, thanks for the opportunity to come and speak. And we visited at the MAC conference not that long ago. So today my challenge is to talk about how we're using soil moisture in Western Canada, but a little bit about who I am and our history. So I have two passions in my life. One's my family, one is precision ag and the technology. And my involvement in the crop intelligence portion is around I would say the widget. And then the smart people do all the agronomy. So there's no agronomy questions allowed today. But I'll share with you a little bit who we are. So I work for South Country Equipment. We're in Regina, Saskatchewan. You can see on the map a little bit where we're located and some of the crops we get involved in. But this is what I want to share with you today is we all get really excited about new technology. You're at a trade show today in the next couple of days, and there's lots of innovation, lots of new products. And when you look at that graph, that's the technology adoption curve. And what really happens is you guys get really excited, you try it on the farm, and then it falls through the cracks. And it's one of the number one challenges we have as equipment dealers, product manufacturers have. And I would say it's one of the biggest challenges you have as producers when you adopt a new strategy or a new technology on your farm. So I'm going to share my story of living through that and what it looks like today. And then there's this. Anybody here not have a cell phone in their pocket? Does anybody here still have a flip phone in their pocket? Things have changed a lot in the last few years, and we really get influenced by many other sources, and so we're impacted in many different ways. So I firmly believe that producers drive innovation, and I believe agronomists drive innovation, and that's what we face daily. This is a long time ago, but if you look at that picture closely, other than the John Deere tractor, everything behind it was developed in Western Canada. This is what the cab, Christian Hebert showed a picture of his cab this morning. This is a little more archaic. But this is a long time ago. That's a weather station we worked with in southern Alberta over 20 years ago. There's innovation here, Crop Pros here. There's other companies that do EC elevation mapping. And then I'm going to put this partner list up there. That's a partner list of ours. But if you look at the names on there, they're all challenged by innovation from you, the producer, and the agronomist. And again, here we are in the field. So 23 years ago, this is Miles Wilderman at Lanigan, Saskatchewan. And we did variable rate satellite imagery on his farm. And I would say the biggest thing here on that picture today is there's no auto steer. Yet we were trying to do some things with technology that then weren't done, and today it's almost commonplace. Big data. So Christian talked about big data this morning. This is actually the same slide he showed up on the right about sprayer utilization. But my question is, where's the value? And I challenged you, where's the value in it for you? Why has it only been the grower to date? Why have industry advisors been scared of the data or don't trust it? And who owns it? Earlier, somebody asked a question about, with the DOT presentation, what are you doing about the data? Who can share it? And I'll leave this by saying, if you've made a conscious decision to invest in technology or data, then trust it and use it. So that's what we're going to talk about. So 20 years ago, just to prove that I haven't aged at all, that's us in a weather station in a field in southern Alberta. And if you see the second last line there, we had to use a 3-watt bag phone to transmit the data. And so what happened was, I don't believe the marketplace was ready. The technology was and wasn't ready. Number one, our mindset wasn't ready. And number two, we severely failed to leverage the agronomic community. We had all the data, but we weren't using it to make decisions. So here we are, how many years later? And how many of you have a weather station on your farm? Quite a few. So what the resurgence is there, and how are we using the data today? So this is my challenge to you during the presentation, is to walk away thinking different about some piece of technology on your farm. So where we started to think different was we looked below the soil. So we had a moisture probe. If you go back to this picture, we've taken a 1-meter moisture probe with sensors on it, and we're installing it out in the crop canopy in the field, and we're trying to learn what's going on below the soil. So we want to develop a baseline of crop available moisture. What do you start with? What do you end with? You know, if you do have excess moisture, is there an opportunity to talk about capturing additional yield? If it's dry, what can you do about it? And from the rooting activity, you can start to look at plant health. And then there's always the conversation about making marketing decisions, and I'll talk about that. So here's the influencers on our team, and really Elston, Kendall G, Bonnie Manziak, Andrea Drew work on our agronomy and testing in the field. So a lot of it goes back to some of the basic principles that Les Henry's been looking at for just about 40 years. How many of you guys have seen the Western Canadian soil moisture map? Just about everybody. And if you look at the red, I can't even read it from here, but the red is very dry, so in the dry, you have about 1 to 2 inches of crop available water. The green is moist, 2 to 4 inches. Blue is wet. You know, if it's a sand clay, that would be 4. If it's a medium, there would be 6. And heavy clay, there would be 8. And so on. So this has been going on for a while, so we're really not reinventing anything. All we've done is taken some tools and digitized it, really. So what is crop intelligence? It's really us taking soil moisture data and figuring out what the crop available water is, what the expected rainfall would be for the season, and a management factor of your crop, and providing you a water-driven yield potential. So we're basically measuring water and the probability of rainfall. So where's the John Deere owners in the room? You're at the top of the graph, the green ones, and then the New Holland, and I'm just kidding, but really good growers, excellent growers will always, you know, good management practices, good agronomy will always put you at the top. So how much can you grow? On the last 3-4 years, on average, we grow in Western Canada 5.7 bushels of canola for every inch of crop available water after the factory's built. So if you're doing wheat, you can see the number is 7.5. So we need to know how much we can grow, and that's what we deem as the management factor. And then there's this, is the yield gap. So if water wasn't a limiting factor, either too little or too much, then you get down into the genetics, and really that attainable gap is where Mother Nature, hail, insects, whatever it is really your gap. So we want to help you understand what this bar looks like. That's our goal. And what's really interesting when we have guys set up in the system is the yield goal, regardless of yield region, or variety selection, really doesn't vary that much on average. Last year, the Alberta average yield goal for canola was 60 bushels. And unfortunately, Manitoba beat Saskatchewan by a bushel. But regardless of geography or variety selection, that's your average yield goal. So how much can we really grow if in our minds that is just our goal? So one of the things that we learn is water usage by depth. So most plants will use up to 70% of the majority of their water in the top 50, 70 centimeters of the ground. So that's where we're putting our moisture probe. So this is what we're trying to measure for you and provide information to you on. And so if I take that and show you the actual graph, this is a moisture probe in a field, and the green line is the top sensor. So this green here would be the 10 centimeter depth, and then the yellow, and then the black, and so on. And so from the research here to what we're actually sensing, you can see that the majority of it's pulled from the top 10 to 50 centimeters. And if you think about that from a fertility perspective, if most of your water is being used in the top, where are your nutrients? So this isn't research done by me or my team. This was done by Agritrend across Western Canada, and it's just the research. But it begs the question of if the water is being used in the top or the middle of the, what are the nutrient levels there? And again, just some different root crop differences, root structures of the different crops. So one of the things that I said earlier was about trusting the data. So we spend lots of time, we'll get asked, well, Ryan, how do you know if it's root activity? How do you know if the roots are actually 10 or 20 or 30 centimeters down? So when we get information back from a capacitance moisture probe and help you understand what that reading means and say the roots are 10 centimeters or 20 centimeters deep, we want to be out there or encourage you to be out there to dig up the roots and have a look. If the roots are 20 centimeters deep, we want to be able to see that that's what's really happening. And if you're an agronomist that's scouting or a grower that's doing your own work, we'd encourage you to do the same thing. On average, on a normal year, whatever the normal year is now, this is what we have found. This is not what happened last year. But normally it takes canola from seeding date, reasonable germination, it takes 21 days for us to start to sense root activity at that first sensor. Then 3 days later, we get down to 20. 3 days later, we get down to 30. And you can see the rest of it there, 6 days and 2 to 3 weeks. So what we're showing you is this is indicating the first sign of root activity at the 10 centimeter sensor. So normally 21-ish days from seeding. And then the yellow line starts to use water, and then the black. These stair-stepping indicate that's daily moisture change by sensor depth. So on wheat, you could see it's 14 days, 3 days, and so on. So if this was normal, or relatively normal, and you had your canola seeded for 6 weeks and you didn't have any rooting activity, in Manitoba you might say, well, Ryan, it's because it's been really wet. In Saskatchewan, if it was really dry and you didn't have root activity, all I'm saying is the information can tell you something's out of normal, and go and have a look. So this is just the distribution of our equipment across the different types of soil textures. So the majority we had in the last few years was in a loam soil and then clay. And you can see the distribution drops off as we get further over. But this is a visual of what we're trying to measure. So the fall of 2018, this was our ending soil moisture and what it looks like, not on a graph, but more on a visual. So you can see that red band in the middle. That's a drier area. So we're saying that the top here is moist, kind of in the middle, and then we got this dry band here. And then below we get wet again. So that's visually what we're trying to measure and show you. So this fall of 2019, so this is around the Regina region. But you can see the blue bar is 2017, the orange bar is 2018, and this year. is the gray bar. So in the black to loam soil, we were 3.5 inches of crop available water at the end of the year, and this year we're over 6. And then in the clay loam, you can see the next one there. We're historically around 1 inch in the soil, and this year we're at 5. And the clay is 3, and the brown is following along here. So I guess the question for you is, if you knew you had an extra 2.5 or 3 inches of water in the ground at freeze up, how could that or does that change your fertility planning for spring of 2020? Okay? So all that said, are we actually making better decisions today? So how are we using the information? So in 2014, across our network, we had only 8 stations, so not very many. This year, there was 726 in the program across Western Canada. And really, it's 348 farms, and it's not hard to tell that your favorite crops are wheat and canola. That's where the majority of the equipment was installed in, fields of wheat and fields of canola. And really a direct impact acres of about 317,000 acres. And to see where this is spread, this is the distribution across Western Canada. So of course, based out of Regina, that's where we started. Most of our penetration is in Saskatchewan. We do have some very good partners in Manitoba now to deliver the product. And you can see in Alberta the same. So that's really where we're located today with equipment in 2019, and I expect some growth in 2020, of course. And it's really taken some partners to make this work. So I want to give you an example of an in-season decision that was made. This was in 2018, I believe. And I want to talk through how we're using the information now, not so much about how it works. So this farm is at Sedley, Saskatchewan, and for all you John Deere lovers in the crowd, this is the operation center. And really they seeded in Vigor L233P canola. So there's the variety. The date is here, May the 14th at 4 pounds an acre. So crop was seeded. And about as quick as we can get out in the field after the crop is seeded, we install the moisture probe between the seed rows out in the middle of the field. And we drill a hole, of course, and make a slurry. It's a slurry install moisture probe. And about 7 days after we install it, and that moisture kind of equalizes around the probe, we start to give you a reading in crop intelligence. And so at the start of the season, this is May the 23rd now, we're giving you, the producer and the agronomist, really a scorecard of where you start. So at the start of the year, this was in 2018, this field had 7.3 inches of crop available water to start the season in a 1 meter profile. So it kind of gives you your scorecard. So based on what's in the ground and what normally falls from the sky in the season, we're suggesting he would have water potentially to grow 15 bushels over his yield goal. So all it is a mindset. You've got your fertility plan. Now you need to check on germination and assess it along the way. So that's the starting scorecard. And in 2018, we got a beautiful rain, very timely, end of May. So these yellow bars are the 10-year historical rainfall averages for that site. The blue is what was collected on that day in 2018. And you can see this red line is the water-driven yield potential number, and the blue is the amount of crop available water in the soil. So of course, with timely rains, yield potentials should go up if it's at the right time of year. So herbicide time comes along. We'll go back to our documentation. On June the 17th, we sprayed Centurion, Liberty, and Water. So you get a chance to spray the field, have a look. What does germination look like? What does the field variability look like? What does crop intelligence tell us at that time? So now there is actually more water in the ground than 10 or 12 days after seeding because of those timely rains. So the question is, should we tissue test? Should we think about added fertility? What is the root activity? What questions can we answer for you to make a decision from the data? So right now there's 8 inches of water in the ground. But now is when I would tell you to look at more of the plant health side of things. What is the root activity? Where are the roots? What do things look like? So if you look at the raw moisture graph, here's the 10 centimeter sensor very aggressively using water. The 20 centimeter sensor is very aggressively using water. And the 30 centimeter sensor is starting to use. So you're 30 centimeters in the ground, June the 15th or 20th, lots of moisture. So this is a clay soil south of Regina, 38% soil moisture, 40, 46, you can see the numbers. So if you're thinking about a top dress decision, have we provided you more information that you didn't have before to think about if you streamed on liquid fertilizer, is there going to be nutrient uptake and all those things? We still need rain to help move that into the soil. But you've got another set of data to take a spade out. If we suggest you're 30 centimeters in the ground, I would hope you're going to find roots 30 centimeters in the ground. So the decision was made to top dress with the agronomist. Of course, his John Deere sprayer did not break down. These are check strips. June the 19th, we top dressed almost 16 gallons of 2800 and some sulfur. And the end result of that decision was it rained only a couple days after. He got a nice quarter to half an inch of rain, and this was the return on investment. But I wanted to talk about the steps through that process, not just water is there, let's stream it on, and there's magical yield return. There was decisions that were made through the entire process. So if anybody was here this morning and heard Christian's presentation, this is his slide, but this is from 2017 on his wheat. Basically the same scenario, only a little different that this was in 2017, and he was working with only about 40% of the normal rainfall when he chose to top dress his wheat. So of course, if you're running on only 40% of normal rainfall, or is anybody going to get super excited about going and spending more money? The key number that's in here is that there is still 11 inches of water in the ground at Moosomin, Saskatchewan. Then they look at the rooting activity graph and they take a shovel out and look at the roots. And the decision was made to top dress. They did get a little bit of rain after. And you can see the return on investment there. This is Christian's slide right from this morning. I did not produce this slide, but I asked him to share it for today. So it's just another year, different location, different example. And there are times when the best decision that's made is to not do anything. But we're going to give you some information to continue to make those decisions. So about the numbers. Lots of times we get asked, so are you a yield predictor? Can you forecast my yield? And what I want you to do is focus on the trend of change. So this is the farm that I showed you, the canola example. This is their farm in 2018. So all of their probes, so every line is a different field. And at the start of the year, this is back to the scorecard I talked about. You had a yield goal, you had a fertility plan, you had variety selection. So on May the 24th, they put the drill away, and they can see based on their yield goal, so this 0 is essentially their yield goal. So this canola field, the blue one, was 11 bushels over the yield goal based on water and the management factor. This one was 14. This one's only 5, and so on. It's not hard to see when the timely rain came where everything spiked up. And then if you watch the trend of change over time, so this is June, you get into July, you get some rains and recharge the soil with moisture, you get a little more rain, and that trend is what we want you to focus on. So whether that top number is 11 or 20 or minus 5, What we want to focus on is the trend of change and the root activity below the soil. So lots of precision ag products. We talk about all the in-season, satellite imagery, Varus mapping, whatever technology it is that you're using or is available to you. Can we continue to use that information throughout the season? And that was one of our challenges. One of the growers came to us after and said, well, what does next year look like? If I take what's in the ground, what does next year look like? And so the way we do this is we take what's in the ground at the time of removing the probe at freeze up. How much overwinter precipitation would you normally receive? How much in-season precipitation do you normally receive? And then you weigh the probabilities from there. So it's really about picking their risk level. How do you rethink or reset your management goals or your yield goals? What fertilizer requirements might change? Should you ban phosphorus and potash in the fall? What works for you on your farm? And what are some potential strategies that could change based on the information? So, and this is what the 2020 potentials look like. So, how much water is in the ground? There's 2.83 inches of water in the ground. This is where it is in the profile. And if you say this is my overwinter moisture, 5.6 inches, in-season rain is 10. And for those of you that are gamblers and say, I'm going to get 100% of that, then based on water, you've got a water-driven yield potential of around 80 bushels an acre for canola. If you want to bank on only 50%, you see the number. If you want to bank on 75. So how does this, or can this change thinking and planning for fertility and crop rotations, etc.? If you have a really, really wet profile, do you rethink whether I put a pulse crop there or canola there or wheat there? What's the right strategy? So all we're trying to do here is provide you some more information for next year's planning. So this is my last slide. So I am a little early. But I want to talk through the challenges we went through to come to where we are today. So we started with a simple weather station. Maybe you have a simple weather station at home. You need decent equipment. We've chose to use John Deere and Pestle Instruments. And for some reason, we came up with crop intelligence. Basically, the producer demand that started with us with that weather station in 2014 and 15, coming back to us saying, Ryan, we have tons of information. What do we do with it proactively? So crop intelligence came about. Then we need good partners to support the equipment and train the customer on the equipment. And that requires good agronomy and good agronomy partners that understand the equipment, understand the purpose of what we're trying to do. So we can make the best decision in our mind on what we want to do with data, regardless of what the data type is. But now we maybe need a product to apply. So we're using the right product at the right time, at the right rate, the right conditions. So here's a few of them. You know them all. Why would I put Pattison liquid systems up there? Somehow we have to logistically remain efficient in getting this done. So we bought a weather station. We've got an app. Somebody helped us install it. We've got agronomic advice. We bought a product to apply. Now we need the money. Maybe we need to track our finances. If anybody's using farm or Ag Experts field program or granular program, so we want to keep track of our expenses. Then we want to protect our risk, whether it's crop insurance or global ag, and then we need MNP to tell us if we made any money or not. But this is what it takes. This is, in my opinion, what it takes for new technology, new strategies to become successful. We could get all the way down here and have somebody say, I don't trust the data. I don't have product. I don't have the right nozzles. all of those things fall apart, maybe at this spot. Or we get all the way over here and agronomically, we haven't done a good job of understanding what the data means. And we hope that we get all the way over here and we get the money lent, we realize that we're making a profit and it's all good. But that's not how agriculture works every year. So I leave you with this, whatever it is that you're thinking about for technology in the future, but this is what we feel has worked well to get us where we are today, and we've also learned a lot of things along the way on how do we work with partners, how do we work with agronomists, and relate it all back to a simple moisture probe. So with that, that's my story. I think there's time for a few questions and what we're doing. So, questions? There you go. Rajan? What do you do when it's too wet? You weren't supposed to be here today. It's a really good question, and I think it's part of the learning we still have to get better at in Manitoba in areas where it's really wet. But I do know that the moisture probe, a capacitance probe, is going to help you understand what wet really means. You saw those numbers. I don't know if I can get back there quick enough on the actual reading from the moisture probe. But once you understand what the numbers mean, and you can relate wet to, I don't know, there we go. If you can relate these numbers, so 38% soil moisture on a clay soil is how close to field capacity or saturation. So whether it's you using crop intelligence or a capacitance moisture probe, understanding what these numbers truly mean in your situation, I'm sure they're going to help you better understand what's going on in the field. You know, we find organic matter will impact these things. So I'm not answering your question, but I think look to the data to better understand the change. How long are you saturated? Right? How long can a plant handle being underwater? All those things. But the data is there, and we go back to the data over and over and over again. And we did a field day in 2018 with Les Henry. It was either going to be a really good day or a really risky day. And it turned out to be quite rewarding in that if we suggested the roots are at a specific depth, like we're saying here, the roots are at 30 centimeters, and we dig a hole and recognize that that's where they are. So I guess I'm not answering your question, but the probe is going to help you understand how wet is. In your case, water isn't the limiting factor. It might be because it's too wet. But I can't see in the lights, so that's good.
Are there any other questions for Ryan? Oh, one right there.
Yeah. So we started off with a full profile. We drew it down. We got rejuvenated with rain. Do we continue to see it draw below, or does it go back to the top? Is that kind of the question? Yeah, like I don't have a graph that would show that exactly, but if you had a probe in your field from this year and you would realize that, we're getting down, we don't show wilting point here, but as this reaches wilting point at the top, these graphs start to flatten out, showing that it's really gotten more difficult to extract moisture from that depth, and then the 20 will flatten out and the 30 will flatten out, and you'll see that your deeper colors will start to pull heavier, and then when you get a rain event, you'll actually see that the 10 and the 20 and 30 will actually step. And when I say step, it's this step here. They will continue to use water more at the top, and the deeper depths will relax more. I don't have one that I can show you here today, but if it's really late in the season, you're still going to see roots are lazy. You've heard that story before where roots are lazy, and the reality is it's easier for the crop to pull water from that greater root mass at the top than what there is at depth. So yes, this year when we got the later rains, the upper roots became active again. Yeah, and so that answered the question. Not that I've seen that, but I would rely on the agronomy team to speak to that. But quite often, almost always, you see the 10 and 20 and 30 become active again. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
So to get access to information like this, a producer has to have a probe and subscribe. So a producer has access to it, see what it is, what it's like in Europe, anything like that?
So there's two components. One is the hardware. So if you have a piece of equipment that's got a capacitance probe, you've purchased it, you have access to that app and that data. So Crop Intelligence, we interface currently to John Deere and Pessl data loggers. So you as an individual would subscribe to Crop Intelligence, and ultimately that data set is yours. You choose who has visibility and who doesn't. So if you want to set up your agronomist, you can provide them access, or a neighbor, you can provide them access. But currently there is no network of Crop Intelligence numbers, so you couldn't see your neighbor's water-driven yield potential. He wouldn't see yours unless the two of you agreed to share the data amongst yourself. Yeah. Most farms will have, their farm manager, agronomist, maybe an accountant, whoever set up to view the data from Crop Intelligence or the moisture probe. But it's entirely up to the producer how much they want to share and who with. Yep. Again.
Is that all the questions? Great. Okay. Well, thanks. On behalf of Manitoba Ag Days, we'd like to show our appreciation with a small gift for you, Ryan.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for speaking with us today.
Thank you.